wanted you to be here in Karachi, but things are not working out for anyone in the world.
No, look, inshallah, I'll be there sooner than we
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
But look, how are things in Karachi at the moment?
Things are the weather is a little hot, but we are taking all complying with SOPs as much as we can. So gradually things will be better.
In short, we are doing better than Punjab.
Yeah. All right. Pervez, it's good to see you again. Look, it's interesting. Sitting here in Islamabad, it's very difficult to get a good feel for what's happening outside. So it's always wonderful to connect with colleagues in Karachi, in Lahore, etc.
And our Vice President, Mr. Kaleem Faruqi, has joined us. Then President Pakistan Australia Business Forum, Parvez Madraswala, is online.
Yes.
And we have more of our members gradually joining.
Good afternoon, Excellency. Kaleem Faruqi here.
Lovely to see you.
Same here, sir.
From which part of Australia you are, sir?
So look, and I should introduce, by the way, my colleague Ashley. She is here as our first sec looking after economic issues here at the High Commission. I grew up just south of Sydney, but for the last 30 years working in the Foreign Ministry, my home is in Canberra. But I have two sons, one of them's in Canberra and one of them's in Sydney.
Okay. So do they play
Have you
cricket
been
or
to
not?
Australia?
Your sons play cricket or what? Or football?
Yes, like one of my sons likes sport a lot. The other one's a singer. He sings operas, so it's very different.
Oh, very
But
good.
of course, it's going into winter in Australia, and so in Canberra, I think overnight earlier this week was like -5 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
So a little bit different to Karachi weather.
Yeah.
Please.
Maybe like the birds, we should migrate south, in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. So how regularly do you have these engagements?
Aziz?
High Commissioner, we normally keep one event a month, but because of the Zoom, sometime we do more than one also. Like we have you today, and for the 27th of this month, we had the Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral, visiting us and talking in person. But that had to be postponed because of the COVID restriction, and he has moved it to next month. Then in June, early June, we have the Irish ambassador, Sonia. She will be talking to us. So normally we have monthly. We just now got over international public debate competition, about which I'll talk as soon as the meeting starts. So we have a lot of activities going on, and we have a strong presence of English-speaking union in Australia. We have 8 branches in Australia, and the presence of English-speaking union there has been for around 65 years. So we have a good presence of English-speaking union in Australia. After all, Australia is part of the Commonwealth, and our patron-in-chief is the Queen of England, and you have a relationship with her also. And
Queen of Australia, that's right.
yes, yeah. And Lord Mountbatten used to be the president of English-speaking union for a very long time, and he retired just 4 years back and handed over to Princess Anne. So now
Duke of Edinburgh. Aziz, Duke of Edinburgh. Not Lord Mountbatten, the Duke.
Duke of Edinburgh.
I'm sorry, Duke of Edinburgh, Lord, mixing up, not Lord Mountbatten, Duke of Edinburgh, who just passed away, not Lord Mountbatten, forgive me. And now Princess Anne is our president. So Duke of Edinburgh handed over to Princess Anne.
Oh, that's interesting. I hadn't realized that long history.
Yeah, English-speaking union started in the year 1918, and it has been more than 103 years. We celebrated a centennial year in 18, and we have a big presence in Australia, New Zealand, and even in United States of America. We have a big presence, and then we have in this debate, international public service competition, we had participation from 55 countries, and it was a very, very close contest. And the candidate of Pakistan came second. He could not come first, and the candidate from Malaysia got to the first position.
I see.
Yeah.
When was
But
the competition?
It was a public debating competition, and
Yes.
I would be too glad to share the links with you. And if you look at the recording and look at the caliber of these youngsters, they are brilliant. They are genius. The way they speak and the way they do their homework, I can tell you that they work very hard, and I'm
Yes.
glad for the winner. And the boy from Pakistan was from Islamabad, and
Oh,
a very,
really?
very bright boy.
And how many branches of the English-speaking union are there in Pakistan?
The financial for the public service competition, sir?
No. How many branches of the English-speaking union are in Pakistan? You said there are 8 branches in Australia.
We have Karachi, the headquarters, then we have a branch in Islamabad and one in Lahore.
Okay, yep.
And Excellency, another good news is that Mr. Aziz Mehman was elected the Vice President of the International English-Speaking Union also. For the first time in the history, over 100 years, they added the Vice President category, and Aziz Mehman is the first elected president of the International ESU also.
Oh, that's great news. Congratulations.
So, Mr. President, with your permission, I think should we start?
Yes, please go ahead. Please go ahead.
Okay. Thank you very much. Bismillah ar-Rahman Rahim. Your Excellency, ladies and gentlemen, I, as Secretary General, call the meeting to order, and I would request President of the PABF, Mr. Parvez Madraswala, to recite from the Holy Quran. Parvez?
Yeah. A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Kul huwallahu ahad. Allahu samad. Lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahu azim.
Thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, it's our proud privilege today to have Dr. Geoffrey Shaw, the High Commissioner from Australia. And we also welcome Ashley, who's joined us also. We had hoped and we had wished that this event should be in physical mode rather than on Zoom, but we still believe that we should not let the time go by, and when we have this opportunity to go virtual, let's go virtual. So without further ado, may I request our President Aziz Mehman to present any house announcements, the welcome address, and please introduce our chief guest and guest speaker. Mr. Aziz Mehman.
Thank you, Majid, and welcome, Excellency. A few in-house announcements as I was just talking to you that international public speaking competition, as we call it, IPSC, just concluded last week. And what a great event has come to an end. Our candidate Samir of Lahore Grammar School, Islamabad, got into the grand final. Now, this was after a long time, after 6 years that we got into the grand final. Samir spoke very well, but the Malaysian was little better and was the winner. Looking back, more than a decade back, our Sidra Iqbal was the winner of the grand final. And 6 years back, Bakhtavar of Zabis Karachi got into the grand final. And now Samir did it. We need to work hard to reach our goal. It is just not winning. We participate every year and contribute. We need to expand our strength and our base. This year, our team headed by Zora saw addition of Sunaina Ismail. Sunaina did very well. The principal, Lahore Grammar School, Islamabad, Flora, she worked very hard on Samir. We are thankful to her. One more thing is that we have the annual report coming out very soon, and we have the articles and everything compiled together. We had some slots of advertisements. We have got 7 advertisements so far, and we have space for 7 more advertisements, and each color page to the member is only 50,000 rupees. 50,000 rupees, we have 7 pages. So we'll give this on first come, first serve basis. As I mentioned earlier, Chief of the Naval Staff, Admiral Amjad Niazi, was supposed to come to us to speak in person in his uniform. Unfortunately, this visit has been postponed to June because the hotels have not yet opened up. We have the Irish ambassador, Ambassador Sonia McGuinness. She will speak to us in the month of June, and we will soon announce the date. Excellency, Dr. Shaw, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity to welcome you here this afternoon on behalf of the office bearers and the members of English Speaking Union, as well as on my personal behalf, and extend to you our earnest gratitude for being with us. As you are aware, we at English Speaking Union of Pakistan hold regular sessions with prominent personalities whereby we hear their views along with exchanging mutually beneficial ideas. I'm sure that our interaction with you will be enlightening and informative. Ladies and gentlemen, let me share briefly few words about our distinguished guest, Dr. Geoffrey Shaw, who is from Sydney, but now lives most of his time in Canberra, the capital. Dr. Shaw holds rich experience of foreign affairs, particularly in field of multilateral diplomacy. Interestingly, Dr. Shaw has obtained his doctorate in chemistry, and this trait he shares with the outgoing yet exceptional German Chancellor Angela Merkel. Angela Merkel, gave leadership to Germany for 18 years. And when she said goodbye, the whole nation gave her a standing ovation. This is very rare, in the politicians don't receive such a pat on the back while leaving, but she did it, and we are proud of her. And now coming back to Dr. Shaw, he has worked in International Atomic Energy Agency, looking over proliferation matters under the auspices of United Nations. He was also associated with disarmament affairs and participated in the Conference of Disarmament. Dr. Shaw also has vast experience of dealing with human trafficking, a menace extensively suffered by the countless people of the developing world. I need not dwell upon the significance of Pak-Australia relation, as it is ought to be the domain better left to Dr. Shaw to wax eloquently about it. Simply, I can say that we are fortunate to have among us a person of his stature who would certainly apprise us with the bilateral relationship between both our countries, as well as share some of his experiences about the specific field he has been associated with. I extend my profound gratitude to Dr. Shaw and convey the sincere appreciation of English-speaking Union of Pakistan for gracing this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency, the High Commissioner of Australia.
Mr. President, thank you very much. And colleagues, it's a genuine pleasure for me to be able to join with you today, at least virtually. Like you, I would very much welcome being in Karachi. I look forward to getting back down to Karachi, which is, of course, a fabulous city. But at least we can connect, as I say, virtually, and I look forward to our conversation today. I think that the ability to exchange ideas and engage in discussion are so important to fostering understanding and cultural connections, especially for people from different backgrounds. And therefore, I think the English-speaking union, which I realise now has been running for over 100 years, has such an important role to play in facilitating this, including through invitations such as the one you've offered and sent to me. I look at your program coming up, and I think you have a very interesting and diverse view of speakers, first range of speakers, and I think that it only enhances understanding and develops relationships. You mentioned the relationship between Pakistan and Australia, and I'm really pleased that there's a tradition of very strong linkages. Our bilateral ties, of course, as you've mentioned, include our Commonwealth heritage, as well as our federated democratic system of government, a shared passion for cricket, and similar climate and water challenges. Our people-to-people links stretch back to the 19th century when Pakistani Cameleers opened up much of Central Australia. And today, over 84,000 Pakistanis call Australian home, including many Pakistani students studying our universities. Today, I want to focus on Australia's relationship with Pakistan through the economic and trade lens. I think this is a fitting topic given post-pandemic economic recovery is one of the key challenges facing all of us today. The impact we see on the stability and prosperity of our own region, which I'll label Indo-Pacific, a region that has been the engine room of global growth for the past 2 decades, accounting for some 60% of global GDP, a significant share of global trade and investment, and home to the fastest growing economies. For countries like Pakistan and Australia, this means navigating an increasingly complex and uncertain geostrategic and economic landscape. Now, as you know, Australia is a trading nation. Our prosperity is underpinned through enhanced competitiveness, open, diverse and resilient markets, and importantly, a rules-based trading system. Our economic and security interests are best served, therefore, by deepening regional economic integration in a way that maximises growth through open trade and investment on market-based principles, and within a framework of transparent rules and non-discriminatory, predictable regulatory systems. I understand, and it's only natural that at times of crisis, it can be tempting for governments to turn inwards and raise trade barriers. But experience teaches us that an open economy and a level trade playing field are fundamental for economic prosperity. Standing against protectionism and promoting free trade is therefore a core priority for Australia. That is why we place such a high priority on addressing in particular non-tariff barriers to trade, red tape, or trade rules that unjustifiably restrict the flow of goods and services. I continue to encourage and work with the government of Pakistan to adopt and maintain open trade policies in all sectors, to put in place predictable and transparent regulatory environment, and to remove non-tariff barriers to imports, which are so often critical to businesses here, from agriculture to retail to manufacturing. Such a framework will inevitably attract investment, increase trade, and generate wealth within Pakistan. I encourage the business community in Pakistan to work with the government to help formulate policy and a regulatory environment that enable businesses to grow and benefit from trade. Australia will also continue to work with partners through multilateral organisations to help find COVID-19 economic recovery solutions and to strengthen the global rules-based trading system. We are pleased that, for example, Australia and Pakistan are working together at the WTO on agricultural trade reform, particularly the need to tackle agricultural subsidies, which of course have a huge potential to distort markets. If I turn to our bilateral trade relationship, as Pervez knows, clearly there's more that can be done. There's room for growth. In 2019-2020, two-way trade was a modest 1.84 billion. So there's potential for growth and encouraging signs at the same time. Early this month, the advisor to the PM on Commerce and Investment highlighted that Pakistan's exports to Australia had increased by almost 30% in the 10 months from July 20 to April 2021. The highest 10 months of export numbers to Australia ever. And this is at a time of the pandemic. And despite the pandemic, two-way trade in goods increased by 15.7% from 2019 to 20. I'm pleased to see that traditional areas of a bilateral trade are growing, including, say, in the grains and livestock area. But also I'm really welcoming new Australian businesses entering the Pakistan market and growing in the Pakistan market. For example, health supplements, infant formula. So it's not all doom and gloom in the COVID world. There are new markets and business opportunities for those who are prepared to innovate. Education, of course, is a cornerstone of the trade relationship. As you know, Australia offers education of the highest quality with some of the best universities in the world. Pakistani student numbers in Australia have grown substantially over recent years. The COVID-19 crisis has affected this sector and students have been impacted by travel restrictions. But international students are an important part of our community. Many are still studying in Australia, and for those who are not, we look forward to welcoming them back when conditions allow. In the meantime, there is a clear and pressing need for quality online education for global learners of all ages. Australian universities have been quick to embrace digital technologies and innovation to deliver quality education in a COVID environment. Australian institutions are well placed to offer quality online learning to Pakistani students, and we're exploring this with the Pakistan Higher Education Commission. Indeed, digitisation and the online world are increasingly woven in our lives. Today, we do more of our daily activities online than ever before. This is an example. and global pandemic has only accelerated this trend. Digital technologies such as artificial intelligence, robotics and telecommunications will play a critical role in driving economic recovery post-pandemic. They will be essential to creating new products, markets and industries. According to the World Economic Forum, an estimated 70% of new value created in the economy over the next decade will be based on digitally enabled businesses. The digital economy is not constrained by distance or geography. It's truly a global market. And increasing connectedness to the online world will outlast the pandemic and remain vital for how we work and interact with each other well into the future. Digital technology and the digitisation of the economy is therefore a priority for my government. That said, the same digital technologies that offer so much potential, if misused, can pose risks to national interests, including our prosperity, social cohesion, and national security. That's why Australia is engaging with the world to establish more robust digital trade rules. We want to make it easy as possible for our inspiring businesses to trade across borders, for data to flow freely between nations, and for Australians to participate in a safe and secure online world. We want new domains such as cyberspace governed by international law that reinforces stability, supports openness, and facilitates trade. We believe the values we apply to the physical world should also apply to the digital world. Creating the right environment is not something that any one nation can do alone. It is essential that the international community, including governments, business, civil society, work together to harness the benefits for everyone. That idea that we live in a globalised world where all of the big challenges are common challenges is clear again when it comes to gender. Promoting gender equality and women's economic empowerment is a core priority for Australia. We know that when women work, economies grow. Women's economic empowerment and unconstrained participation in the formal economy is a significant driver of sustainable economic growth and prosperity. It's vital, therefore, that women have an opportunity to make and act equally in economic decision-making and to share in economic benefits. Pakistan has immense potential to unlock through increased participation of women in the formal economy. And I'm pleased to see the government of Pakistan has been taking positive steps to create opportunities for women. For example, last year, the State Bank of Pakistan launched a draft policy entitled Banking on Equality, Reducing the Gender Gap in Financial Inclusion. We will continue to support Pakistan to develop and implement legislative frameworks and policies that advance gender equality in the public and private sectors. For example, we're supporting the Male Champions of Change Pakistan chapter to cultivate the next generation of women business leaders. Male Champions of Change aims to engage male business leaders to increase representation of women in leadership. Pakistan members include the Serena Hotels and Telenor Pakistan, for example. We've worked with the Cash Foundation to offer restructured loans to women entrepreneurs hardest hit by the COVID lockdowns. We've partnered with Service Footwear to create women-only stitching lines that allow women to participate in paid work while respecting cultural norms. But no one nation has a monopoly on the best approach to solving the challenges of gender inequality, and we have much to learn from each other. I'd also like to touch briefly on the issue of human rights. Australia is committed to advancing human rights globally. Men, women and children have the right to fundamental freedoms and to live their lives with dignity. In short, human rights underpin peace and prosperity. Respect for human rights matters, not just from a values perspective, from an economic perspective. For example, we've seen the recent debate over the GSP Plus scheme and potential implications for Pakistan's export competitiveness. For the private sector, respecting human rights is more than just a corporate social responsibility. It makes good economic sense. In an increasingly globalized world, trading partners, shareholders, customers, consumers, and regulatory bodies are demanding greater transparency that human rights are being respected. Abolishing exploitive work practices and improving human rights standards in global supply chains, for example, are critical to the corporate bottom line. Let me wrap up by briefly touching upon the issue of climate change and the impact on human security. The transboundary nature of this challenge makes cooperation between states essential. Prime Minister Khan has described climate change as a key challenge for Pakistan. As one of the driest continents on Earth, Australia shares this challenge. Indeed, it's clear that climate change is bringing global systemic change. It's deepening fragilities within societies, undermining social cohesion, straining institutions, and causing conflict over basic resources like food and water. The UN estimates 155 million people around the world are experiencing hunger because of conflict, extreme weather, and economic shocks. For vulnerable communities facing challenges on several fronts, the impacts on human security, both present and for future generations, are profound. Prioritising water governance and food security, therefore, need to be part of the national security dialogue. Australia has been a long-time supporter of Pakistan's development and has stood with Pakistan in times of crisis. Ours is a partnership-based approach, putting livelihoods and dignity of individuals and communities at the centre. Our two countries have been cooperating on water and food security issues since the 1980s. Australia provided humanitarian support in the aftermath of the 2005 earthquake and the 2010 floods. And in the wake of the COVID-19, we've pivoted support to Pakistan's pandemic response, including to help provisional governments procure ventilators and PPE, and to set up nutritional centres in cities where COVID-19 has increased malnutrition. In the face of unpredictable climate patterns and the cross-cutting impacts of human security, new and innovative forms of cooperation are needed. We have experiences to share, lessons from mistakes made and successes achieved. That's why Australia, for example, has supported the installation of flood warning systems in Gilgit-Baltistan, helped thousands of farming households in Balochistan increase their crop yield while using less water. And recently we launched 2 new programs to address water challenges in both urban and rural communities. There's no limit to the partnerships that can form organically from knowledge exchange and business-to-business linkages between our two countries. Of course, business and financial sectors have a critical leadership role to play in addressing climate change. For example, through investments in new green technology as the world looks to decarbonise. For our part, Australia is reducing our emissions and investing in low emissions technologies. We remain committed to the Paris Agreement and are on track to beat our 2030 target, having already reduced emissions by almost 17% since 2005. And we're investing in practical technology projects that drive economic growth. I commend the government of Pakistan and Prime Minister Khan for championing the need for climate action and environmental conservation. I'm pleased these strides have been recognised by the UN Environmental Assembly, which has selected Pakistan as the host for this year's World Environment Day commemorations. Let me close by offering some final observations. Charting a recovery from COVID-19 pandemic and setting our communities and economies on a more resilient trajectory are immense challenges. Challenges that need governments, the private sector, and civil society to work together. Our goal is to work together across the region to grow our region and support a regional order that seeks economic integration based on international law. and an order that preserves the openness, the stability, and resilience of our region. Economic security is entwined with national security. It's not just about increasing trade. Human rights, gender equality, environmental protections, health security, good governance, and strong institutions all contribute to sustainable economic growth, stability, and prosperity. In charting a way forward, our efforts need to build upon recovery, resilience, and relationships. These opportunities and challenges cannot be addressed in isolation, nor outside the global rules-based system. States need to work together constructively to meet these challenges. Such collaboration that is at the heart of the Australian-Pakistan relationship. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. It was really, you covered a lot of subjects that are what you call today's imperatives. And I think that our members also have absorbed your ideas, opinions, and words. Now, I will, we have a Q&A session. Being on Zoom, there are some points that are made, posted on the chat, and there are a couple of them who would like to speak also. So, as per our tradition, our president, Mr. Aziz Memon, will moderate, and he will take over from here. But if Aziz, you want me to read the chat points?
I've done it. I've done it.
All right,
I've
thank
done
you.
it. Thank
Over to
you.
you.
Thank you. Thank you. Excellency, what an excellent presentation you made. We actually, if we were in person, we would have given you a standing ovation, but can I request my members to give a big round of applause? Maqsood, can we have the spotlight on the ambassador? Ashfaq, Maqsood? Thank you, and keep it this way. Excellency, wonderful, what a knowledgeable, informative presentation. Now, before we go to the Q&A, I want to give the floor first to the President of Pakistan Australia Business Forum, Parvez Madraswala, who is our life member and who works day and night for promotion of trade between Pakistan and Australia. So over to Parvez Madraswala for a short duration.
Thank you, Aziz Saab. Thank you very much, and Majid Bhai. Excellency, thank you so much for your excellent presentation to the members of ESUP and PABF. And Ashley, good to see you on the screen. We just recently chatted, and it is good that you joined this meeting. Excellency, actually, as everybody said, and Aziz Saab also mentioned earlier, that we would like to welcome you to Karachi for a physical meeting with the PABF and ESUP members once the COVID situation gets better and we are free to do our normal business gathering. Since almost 1.5 years under COVID, we have lost so many of our business community friends to COVID, and we now hope that vaccination will rescue us from the fatal attack of COVID virus. As you mentioned, that bilateral trade between Pakistan and Australia has improved, although we are facing COVID situation. And I think there are many opportunities between two countries, Australia and Pakistan, that we should get the business together and we can take this business and bilateral trade to the next level. Pakistani product have a lot of opportunities to be introduced in Australian market. There are many companies from Pakistan exporting a good number of Pakistani product to Australian market. And of course, Pakistani businessmen wanted to have Australian product in Pakistan market, just like we have Australian cows and so many other things that Pakistan is bringing in from Australia. And we thank you, Australia, for supporting always Pakistani business community and the other works you have just mentioned in your speech. And we look forward for your continuous support to PABF and ESUP. And thank you for your taking time from your busy schedule for today's meeting. Thank you very much, High Commissioner.
Thank you, Pervez. Before we move forward, I would like to acknowledge the presence of our former president and who has been a former Pakistan High Commissioner to UK, Mr. Abdul Qadir Jaffar. Welcome, Mr. Abdul Qadir Jaffar. And one more acknowledgement I want to do is that one of our life member, Sayyid Firoz Shah, has recently been awarded by the government of Japan the medal called the Rising Star. He is really a rising star, and we want to congratulate Firoz Shah. Now for the questions, High Commissioner, the first question is from our life member, Salim Zamindar. He wants to ask your comments on CANSUK, that is Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and UK Economic Cooperation Bloc.
Look, well, thank you. And my comments are really short. I'm not familiar with that block. I'll be honest with you. It's not something that has been on my radar or my responsibility. But what we could do is I can happily reach back to my colleagues in Canberra and get an update on that if that's helpful.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. The next question is from Yasmin. Appreciate DFET tremendous role in supporting women economic empowerment in Pakistan.
Look, and thank you for that comment. And indeed, it has been and remains one of our highest priorities in that aspect. We're delighted to working with a number of the provincial governments on both legislative reform, but also practical implementation through some of our development projects. Also, for example, when we're working in the agricultural sector through developing new techniques, which can be used by farmers, including women farmers, to increase their yields while using less water for their crop production. So look, it's an area that we'll continue to work in. So that's one aspect, but it's more than just economic empowerment. It's empowerment right across the board. We've been very pleased to be able to support, for example, Women in Law initiative, because one of the big challenges here of getting access to the judicial system, as is in every country, where it's accessible. So we've launched with the Law Minister here an initiative with Justice Project Pakistan. So look, there are a number of areas we're focused on. We have also worked in areas of women's shelters after the earthquake in Mirpur back in end of 2019, where we're able to be putting together, support local communities where there are a safe space for women to be able to go and set up businesses while the broader community is recovering from the earthquake. So it's a broad brush of areas that we're focused on. What we can do, of course, is fairly limited. We have to be realistic, but we're here to support where we can.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. The next question is from our own Mr. Tiwana. He says that Shan Food exports to Australia have reached $6 million, and they have market with the 2 leading store in Australia, and it's a growing market. The 2 leading stores in Australia are Coles and Woolworth, which contribute around 40% of the retail sales. So, you know, this question is more commercial, but I thought I'll read it out to you, and I will suggest to him, Mr. Tiwana, to have one-to-one session with the president of Pakistan Australia Business Forum, who may be the right person to assist him. Next question, do you want to make any comment on this Shan Food export, Excellency?
Look, no, but it's simply that, as I pointed out in my speech, it's encouraging to see that there has been growth. Even during this pandemic, we've seen growth, both sides. So I think it's encouraging, but clearly there's a lot more that can be done.
Thank you. The next question is from Saad Mahmood. When do you think that the international borders of Australia will open for the students?
I wish I had a crystal ball to be able to answer that question. It's a tough one, and our borders still are closed, not just for students. It's difficult for Australian nationals to get back, including my colleagues here at the High Commission. It's not easy for us to get back to Australia because the mandatory hotel quarantine, the caps on flights. So it's an area that the government, though, is very keen about opening up for our students as soon as we can. But realistically, I think we're a few months away yet from that happening. So that's why in the meantime, we need to explore those other options in the digital world so that education continue, that no one's lives are put on hold. And then when borders open, then of course students can get back. But I am pleased that 75% of the Pakistan students had never left Australia when COVID hit, and they're still in Australia studying. And working and having that benefit of being there, and we're benefiting from their presence. So it's something that we very much value, but I don't have any better news at this time.
Thank you. Excellency, we tried to have the questions focused on your speech. Questions, but I have two members of mine. One is our NCEC member Bakhtiar and another member, life member Rauf Tabani, and they would like to have your views on Kashmir and on the what is happening in Palestine this day.
Palestine. Okay. Well, it's not. Again, it's not an area that falls within my remit, but clearly we need to see a restoration of peace and dialogue.
Thank you. Thank you. And there's one more question from another gentleman. If exports from Pakistan to Australia can be huge possibility, what is the Australian government? I think he wants to say that IT exports from Pakistan to Australia can be huge possibility. And how can Australian government support this? IT exports from Pakistan to Australia.
It's not so much, it's a complex question. What the Australian government can do is continue to advocate open and free trade and predictable regulatory frameworks. That's the role of our government. That's why we are so keen on making sure that we have robust rules of the road when it comes to global trade. It's critical. So that's what we can do as a government. And that's what I've been saying, that we want to work with the Pakistan government and continue to do so, whether it's in the World Trade Organization or bilaterally, that we have removal of non-tariff barriers, that we have open trade. That's a win-win. When it comes to the specific issue of IT exports, that's not for my government to work on. That's something that your trade commissioner in Sydney or Melbourne can give the best advice to how to enter the Australian market.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Wes Mir wants to ask a question. LNG value chain, what I could understand that LNG value chain. Wes Mir, can you elaborate further on that? The LNG value chain.
Yeah, hi, Excellency, how are you? Hope you
Yeah,
well.
good, thank you.
Okay, as appreciate your kind presence over here, as Mr. Naiman mentioned, what actually we've been looking for, as I'm sure you know, that Australia will become, looks to be hopefully, that part of the world being the largest exporter of LNG, not now, after Qatar. What's your view on it? And recently what would be, because I was a part of the government team who was negotiating on the LNG, and you know, our gas bill is the biggest issue in our economy right now with the FDI and the balance of payment is LNG or a gas bill. How do you see Australia's role in this? And in recent time, there was a talk between a G2G affair with the government deal when the previous government is saying. Do you see that there was any active role on it? Because during your previous predecessor, Mr. Excellency Howard Taylor's time, there was a talk going on that about government-to-government deal and Australian cargo directly coming into Pakistan, not through our traders, by a direct producer such as like a Woodside under arbitrage mode. So what's your view on that?
Look, in terms of the LNG, I don't think there has been a lot of discussion, frankly, since I've been here. Obviously, this is going to be a commercial decision, and I don't know whether there were any traction at the commercial level from people on both sides here and in Australia to take that forward. We will not, negotiate arrangements unless there's a need for them, and I think that Pakistan has turned to alternatives when it comes to LNG. I know, as you mentioned, Woodside were looking at this a few years back, but I'm not aware, I don't know, Ashley, you're aware, but not aware of any further discussions. But I might necessarily also have visibility if there were discussions between commercial sector. I don't have that visibility, but it's not been raised for me at a government level. And it didn't come up when we had our last bilateral trade talks. That was not an issue that was raised, the Joint Trade Commission.
Okay, because something we really like to push it upon, because now, since
Thank
the
you.
LNG
Thank you, Wesley. Thank you. Excellency, the last question is from our own Vice President, Kaleem Faruqi. He wants to say something. Please, Kaleem Faruqi.
Excellency, thank you very much for your very elaborative presentation on our relations. One thing that concerns Pakistan is you being a member of Quad. Now, as far as we know, it's supposed to be an informal strategic dialogue with 4 members, with Australia being one. But what it is seen as is basically to counter China, bringing India into the forefront. What are your views on this, sir?
Look, let me be frank about this. I mean, there's a lot of misinformation and propaganda about the Quad. Australia's foreign policy is based up on bilateral meetings, minilateral meetings, regional meetings, multilateral. It's multi-layered. The Quad is just one component of a much broader set of relationships. The Quad has been set up after the tsunami in 2004 as a humanitarian response mechanism. 2004, humanitarian response. What we see now, and you would have seen the Quad leaders meeting in March, it's a very positive agenda. 2 things you need to be clear of. There's a lot of misinformation and deliberate propaganda. 1, it's not an Asian-style NATO alliance. It's not a military alliance. It's got a positive agenda. Look what was agreed. Vaccine rollouts, for example, dealing with humanitarian crises, etc. So that's one thing. Second thing, it is absolutely ludicrous to think that you can contain China. China is a global power. The United States is a global power. No one is looking at trying to contain China. Australia, if I look at our perspective, we have a working relationship, a strategic partnership with China, comprehensive strategic partnership. We want to have a working relationship with China. Economic prosperity in Australia has been, and growth has been driven by that bilateral relationship in China. We still have a very robust trade relationship with China. There are obviously going to be at times differences of opinion. It's about how we manage those, and they need to be done calmly, rationally, and based on international law. So look, in short, the Quad is just one part of our initiatives, just like Pakistan, Tajikistan, and Russia have a trilateral initiative. There are many of these sort of mechanisms. So look, I think my advice would be look behind the rhetoric to actually the facts.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Excellency, our Secretary General Majid Aziz also has one question, and I have to keep good relationship with him, so I will not deny.
Fair enough.
Yeah, thank you, Aziz. Excellency, first thing that I would like to say is that your High Commission is one of the, I would say, most proactive, very, very cooperative, very, very forthcoming when it comes to getting people to uh, businessmen to go to Australia, and especially those who are importing from Australia. And we have seen in the past that you even gave visas on a Sunday when it was very, very imperative. As you know, Pakistan is importing a lot of commodities like canola, pulses, things like that, chickpeas, whatever. Just canola is in excess of 1 million tons from Australia, thanks to the unavailability from Canada and the price factor, among other things. And since our company is maybe 70, 75% through our company, so we are very, very concerned about increasing our imports also. The second point that I want to bring about is that mining is a very important factor over there in Australia. Uh, I also happen to be the immediate past president of the Employers Federation of Pakistan, and we have an economic council, and we are focusing on value addition of minerals. We have started feasibility reports, which we are giving it free to genuine investors. What we want to do is convert minerals into chemicals for exports, and we are, I can say, we have made a start, and the first factory is about to come up. Uh, this is our responsibility. I mean, the, the EFP is not making money out of it. We want to promote value addition. So I need your comments on how uh, uh, Pakistan can benefit from the minerals technology, the minerals experience, and the minerals know-how that Australia possesses, and how to what can be done to value add minerals, because right now minerals that have been are mined are, really speaking, there is a lot of wastage, and you are well. Australia is among the top in mineral technology. So these are the 2 points that I would like to your intervention, please. Thank you.
Look, no, thank you very much. And I'm glad you mentioned things like canola, because I have been traveling when I was last in Multan, and I was speaking to a producer there, a manufacturer who needs canola, and he was pleading with me, and a number of importers are pleading with me, the problems they're having, we don't have to import Australian canola because the problem, Canada sold theirs to China. We've exported canola to Pakistan previously. But we've come into, this is one of these non-tariff barriers where we've hit a hurdle, a regulatory hurdle, being able to get and increase our exports of canola in to suppliers, manufacturers here to produce the products they need to be able to sell. So again, any help you can in pushing forward a liberalised trading system is critical. I mean, this ties in with your second question, and that is ease of doing business. I mean, it is positive that Pakistan has moved up the rankings, but it's still a long way and a lot more work needs to be done. Because if you're looking at trying to get Australian expertise in the mining sector, that's one of the critical issues you need to be facing. You know, how do we make it easier for commercial facilities in Australia? And we have world-leading technologies when it comes to mineral extraction. How do you get that, make it easier to get that technology, those connections here in Pakistan? Because you have an enormous potential wealth in the mineral sector. So look, I think that's where we need to be focused on from my advice. Let's try and make sure the ease of doing business is improved while we're connecting and using your trade commissioners in Australia to try and find connections and build bridges. But I can tell you, unless that ease of doing business is improved, Australian businesses will always look for easier markets. So again, it's an area where we need to be working. The private sector, the government sector need to be working the financial sector on these to build those bridges, and it ultimately ends up being a win-win.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Before we move ahead, I just want to make one announcement that it has been a tradition to present a memento to our chief guest. But as we are not meeting in person and it's a virtual meeting, we are keeping back the memento, and we will hand over on the first visit of yours to Karachi after this COVID, whenever you come. And we will not forget it. So this was just a small remark. And we will have Mr. Karim Faruqi to give vote of thanks, our Vice President.
Mr. High Commissioner, thank you very much for sparing your time. It's been difficult times, but it was nice to see you, hear you. You have made a very comprehensive presentation on the economic relations between Pakistan and Australia, including cricket, which of course is something that every Pakistani knows and looks forward to a match between Australia and Pakistan, though nervous about the outcome. But we can never forget winning our World Cup in 1992 from Australia. That is always in our mind. We are all looking forward to your visit to Karachi. Karachi is the economic hub. There are a lot of people who would love to meet you. And as soon as the situation improves, we will definitely host you here in Karachi. And like the President said, your memento will be waiting for you to come and receive it. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you, Kaleem. And with that, I close the meeting with a bundle of thanks to His Excellency, to Ashley, and hope to see you soon in Karachi. Thank you, sir.
Inshallah. Thank you very much, and all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency. Good day.